Hi, welcome to Family Law with Justine Clark. Today I'm going to talk to you about parenting and children.
Justine, I'm separating from my partner and we have children. How do I deal with parenting arrangements? And more importantly, how do I deal with my spouse?
I think the best way in which you can deal with your spouse in negotiating parenting arrangements during and after separation is to try and sit down and refocus the conversation and the arrangements around the children. So to speak to your spouse, if you're able to do so, and if there are no risk factors present, and I'll get to that in a moment, sit down and say, we need to work out what we are going to do in relation to our children and how we make sure that they are not damaged by this process. How can we take control of our situation and separate with dignity and civility and in a way that allows our children not to be impacted by our decision to separate? Focus on our and we and making it a joint issue to be determined together and to be solved together if that's possible. Try to refocus your partner or spouse on how you can work together to try and remove the children from the decision that the two of you have made in a way that doesn't impact them in the future or immediately, if that's possible. Now, there will be some families and some circumstances where that's not possible, where your spouse is either violent, abusive, or there are issues of neglect or abuse involved. In those circumstances, then I would highly recommend that you act protectively and seek advice immediately. But that's something that you would need particular advice on, and if necessary, reach out to support services available throughout Victoria in the necessary areas, particularly family violence related services.
If we do want to negotiate parenting arrangements, what are the factors that will impact on the appropriate parenting arrangement?
Age and stage of development. So if you have very, very young children, generally the court will make orders, assuming that you get to that point, for very limited time arrangements away from the primary carer. So children under the age of 3, there'll be fairly constrained arrangements. And if the primary carer is mum, then that means that dad will have consistent and regular time, but probably shorter time. If dad's a primary carer, obviously, then that would be reversed. Generally, that's the exception rather than the rule, even though it is more common these days than it has been in previous decades. In terms of older children who are school-aged or secondary school-aged, then increasing that time to allow for more time with both parents is appropriate, even though there will probably be a primary base, at least until secondary schooling. The only exception to that is, again, where there are risk factors involved of family violence, abuse or neglect. The court will prioritise a meaningful relationship between parents and children, but only to the extent that it's safe to do so. If there are risk factors involved, then the court will prioritise the protection of children from those risk factors. However, my advice to clients when they are separating and attempting to negotiate parenting arrangements is, in the absence of risk factors, attempting to have their spouse focus on what's best for them as a family, but more importantly, what's the best situation and what's the best outcome for their children, what arrangement is going to best serve their children, and how can they work together forward in a way that protects the children from some of the negative impacts of separation that can often arise. Really, it's a matter of focusing on what is best for and speaking to your spouse and saying what is best for our family. Ultimately, in parenting matters where parties have separated, my very strong advice is for clients to attempt to speak to their spouse and try and find a way to refocus on what is best for their family, and to say to their spouse, I want to try and reach an agreement and reach an outcome that is best for our children and best for our family, and that allows us to move forward with a level of civility and dignity that will allow us to be present at our children's 18th birthdays, at their weddings, when their children, our grandchildren, are born without any difficulty for our children. That can sometimes be a pipe dream, but if that's in the front of each party's mind, then there's a better prospect of positive outcomes for children.